Cole put in the pre-shared key into the drawer and opened it as the group rushed into the final room between them. Guns had been banned in California for a few years. The buyback program had been successful. Mexico was only ever getting guns because of America in the first place. Everyone who didn't comply either fled to a more conservative state or got thrown in jail. Everyone was freaking out about guns, which were quickly becoming banned and confiscated in their origin country, funneling into an adjacent, failed country's gun-free zone. Meanwhile, kids and kilos of drugs were streaming into the country through a self-sabotaged wall. It was like nobody could make up their mind which was worse. The state attacked its protectors in a fit and unmeasurable and predictable intolerance under the banner of tolerance. The moment every last gun was out and every last undesirable was out, they became the undesirable. The same people that invited them in got blamed for everything, and they were way too happy to accept the blame. All of their guilt reached a crescendo, and completely of their own free will they abandoned their own city in the final ultimate failure. Then, in a twist of irony, the place everyone was fleeing to with their kids and drugs to get away from the guns turned into an extension of where they came from, and there was nobody left to blame but themselves. Maybe when they muled the drugs over, they should have kept a couple of guns for themselves, purchased with the millions in US dollars of drugs per van load that came over. Those guns could have never got them free pretty quick, and became... But, oh well. Those laws, the drama, the politics, none of it mattered now. There were no more laws, no more Hollywood. There were only victors and victims. Cole rushed up the stairs, the Hollywood sign burning a fresh memory. All the actors that begged and pleaded for this to happen for years as they molested their co-workers were off on a luxury island now. Cartel and mafia lords lived in those mansions now. The Walk of Fame names replaced with new celebrities every week or two until those were replaced as well. Then a light, usually ignored, caught Cole's otherwise divided attention. The wristband Cole was wearing started pulsating. He figured that meant he was on the right floor. He smashed through the steel door as if it was nothing and slammed it shut. There was nothing left to hold the door closed, so he shoved the nearest thing he could find in front of the door. A 200-pound production printer that had been gathering dust was all between him and more than 100 murderous, racist, dirty bastards. Originally, when he was given the wristband at one of the border crossings, he didn't even know it had an LED in it. Some guy had ominously told Cole that he needed it at a further checkpoint and snapped it on his wrist before he could protest. He hadn't been able to get it off, and then promptly forgot about it some time ago. When he got close to this building, it had turned yellow. He passed another building earlier that made it turn a color, but the cartel chased him away and it shut off. And now it was pulsating yellow. Cole took several steps away from the door as he guessed which direction to go. Orange light from the fires outside and the occasional fireworks casted flickering and exploding light and shadow throughout the office building. Cole was glad none of those explosions and gunshots were gunshots aimed at him, although he was distinctly sure some of them were gunshots. And not fireworks or explosions. The thundering footsteps only moments behind on the stairwell, and they slammed into the door seconds later. He passed high cue balls and medium cue balls and low cue balls. There were cue balls with pictures of kids, desks with dead plants, and even some cue balls with windows on them. The corporate jungle disgusted Cole as he continued to hop from cube to cube, seeing if his wristband's pulse would pick up speed. There was a final fastest speed pulse on his wristband, and Cole heard a drawer unlock in the darkness, and the wristband promptly shut off, masking Cole in the dark. The sound of the drawer opening was a distinct audible cue, in between feet racing towards him that must have gotten through the printer and door and his distractions. Cole reached into the cabinet in the darkness as the barking of foreign orders closed the distance. He had no idea what was left in this dead drop, but sincerely hoped it wasn't empty like the last few had been. There'd only been places he'd heard about and seen. Pictures of, on the dark web, supposedly secret caches, but they'd all been stripped clean already, or were a hoax of an old scavenger hunt or something. This had been the first time the wristband had actually turned on and led him to one. so he was trying to be hopeful. It was now or never, and Cole plunged his hand into the darkness. His hand firmly grabbed a firm but cold and familiar grip. As Cole turned around and leveled the sidearm, he said a silent prayer. The first stalkers were nearly within melee range as Cole pulled the trigger on the double-barreled, double-magazined 45 ACP. 2 oversized rounds fired at the same time, destroying the closest psycho rushing Cole. Cole could smell the rank weeks of sweat and something else now mixing with blood. The crumpled body looked like it had a women's or girl's underwear adorning him like perverse trophies. Cole stomped on his face with a well-placed boot as he bled out helplessly on the ground and proceeded to empty the remainder of the ammunition in from the 2 magazines. The gangers were conveniently lined up down the cube hallway, and it wasn't much to lay many of them out, several rounds piercing or winging the first target to smash into collateral. The cartel grunts continued charging, knowing there was no way he had enough ammo for all of them. There hadn't been any guns but theirs here for some time, at least they thought. Cole mused to himself the next courses of action as he counted. At least now it was seeming less than 100 to 1. Using the few more seconds his firearm had purchased him, he stuffed the bulky, empty pistol in his waistband with some effort, his hands fumbling as the adrenaline wreaked havoc with his finer motor skills. Cole reached his hand back in the cabinet and pulled out a bag and threw it over his shoulders. It would have otherwise been heavy, but Cole was quite strong and intimidating at over 6'5". Cole worked out nearly every day throughout the week in one capacity or the other, so the bag weighed little to him. Cole reached in the drawer one final time and pulled out something very simple. The next wave of would-be attackers stumbled and clambered over the crying, dying bodies, now only feet away from Cole. A balanced and heavy stick, made out of well-seasoned redwood specifically for his size, fit into the hand well. Cole grinned at the target-rich environment. Within 5 minutes of heavy fighting, the remaining collaboration of militia, gang, mafia, and cartel members were dead, dying, or running out of the building for dear life. Nobody noticed the building shake a little bit as one of the multiple tremors a day gently rustled the building's jimmies. Cole hoped in his heart that the rumored moderate group was here somewhere and still alive. Unfortunately, without a direction or a clue, he would run out of resources completely and not be able to get home to his loving wife and growing son. Cole headed to backtrack north to head to his next stash and back home. Chapter 3, Zen-like. It was late at night, but Cole felt like he could sense the entire street with every silent footstep. He walked defiantly down the center line, almost in a peaceful trance. Splashed in out-of-the-way places along the road were cool green fluids from a glow stick Cole had broken open to leave a convenient trail. Cole had been close to something that the cartel hadn't wanted him to see. He was sure of it. This trail would lead him back to that general area. Hopefully the cartel was routed for a while. As Cole walked towards his prior location, he thought about what the group would have been like if they were followers of his code, old followers of his code or some such. There wasn't much intel to work off of, only that a message came in on their encrypted tunnel point-to-point internet with the right call signs that said one of the chapters was still intact and needed an evac. Cole was to make contact, assess the group, and get them out if they were one of his distant chapters. Staying was impossible, and getting in or out was almost as difficult, but he had to try. He felt responsible for these groups. They believed in him, and he would die trying to save them. Cole walked and walked throughout the night. It was peaceful and quiet, except the occasional sounds of fireworks in the background. Cole generally loved fireworks, but not this type. The cartels also love fireworks and use them to see at night. The improvised rockets had the double duty of offensive weapons in a pinch. Cole had dealt with firework attacks many times before. As the fireworks crackled and exploded, Cole gripped his defensive improvised baton tight in his hand. Cole was intent on smacking away any fireworks that would come his direction. Thankfully, they were many blocks away and generally heading skyward. He assumed in a park or something, no doubt telling each other that they ran into a pack of 100 and came out on top.